Tonight we journey back, far beyond the familiar world of smart devices and instant gratification, to a time when the sun beat down on the fertile banks of the Nile, and the very essence of life, even luxury, revolved around something remarkably simple: bread. You find yourself standing not in a bustling modern bakery, but in the dusty, sun-baked courtyard of an ancient Egyptian home, the air thick with the scent of fermenting dough and wood smoke. You watch, fascinated, as a woman kneads, her movements fluid and practiced, her hands shaping what looks suspiciously like a lump of modern-day sourdough. This isn't just a snack, it's sustenance, currency, and sometimes even medicine. You probably won't survive this journey if you think you can skip the bread. It was that important. You'd be amazed at how much of daily life, from the construction of monumental pyramids to the simplest family meal, hinged on the humble loaf. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And please, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel a warm breeze, carrying the distinct aroma of earth and something baking. It's a comforting smell, one that speaks of hearth and home. Even if that home is made of sun-dried mud bricks and has a flat roof you could climb onto to watch the stars. You notice the sun beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and deep violet. The kind of sunset that makes you feel incredibly small yet profoundly connected to something ancient and vast. The sounds of the village are softening too. The distant bleating of a goat, the low murmur of voices, the rhythmic thump of a pestle on a mortar. You are, in essence, becoming a part of this ancient rhythm. You observe the woman again, her hands moving with a practiced grace that suggests generations of knowledge passed down. She's not just making bread, she's performing a ritual, an everyday act imbued with deep significance. You see the various stages of her work, the initial grinding of grain, a laborious process that turns hard kernels into a coarse flour. You can almost feel the grit between your teeth just imagining it. Then comes the mixing, often with water from the Nile, which was believed to have life-giving properties, and sometimes a bit of leftover dough from the previous day, the ancient precursor to a sourdough starter. This is the mainstream historical fact of the moment: bread was the absolute staple of the ancient Egyptian diet, accounting for a massive portion of their caloric intake. It wasn't just a side dish, it was the meal. Think of it less as bread and butter and more as bread and more bread. As she works, you notice something peculiar. She takes a small, oddly shaped piece of dough, not quite round, not quite flat, and sets it aside. It looks a bit like a misshapen discus. You wonder if she's just practicing her throwing technique for the ancient Egyptian Olympics. But no, her movements are too deliberate, too respectful. This isn't for eating, at least not in the traditional sense. This brings us to a quirky tidbit. The ancient Egyptians sometimes made votive bread, small loaves or bread models offered to the gods, placed in tombs, or used in rituals. These weren't meant to be consumed by the living, but were symbolic offerings, ensuring the deceased had sustenance in the afterlife or appeasing a deity. Imagine leaving a tiny baguette at your ancestor's grave. Here you go. Grandma, enjoy your eternal snack! The air cools slightly as dusk deepens. You can almost feel the gentle hum of the unseen forces that governed their lives. The reliable flooding of the Nile, the predictable path of the sun, the slow, steady turning of the seasons. You find yourself pondering the sheer simplicity and complexity of their existence simultaneously. Everything revolved around the land, the sun, and the river. No wonder they revered them so deeply. You notice the woman adding a few dates to her dough, mashing them in with her fingers. This would have added a touch of sweetness, a rare indulgence. You can almost taste the earthy sweetness, mingling with the yeasty tang of the rising dough. She hums softly to herself, a low, melodic sound that seems to blend with the rustling of the papyrus reeds along the distant riverbank. It's the kind of sound that lulls you into a peaceful state, where your mind can wander freely through the sands of time. She begins to shape the loaves, some round, some elongated, some even braided. You realize the sheer variety of bread shapes was quite impressive. It wasn't just one type of bread. Historians still argue whether some of these specific shapes held particular symbolic meanings beyond mere aesthetic preference. Were the conical loaves reserved for offerings, or were they just a baker's fancy? This is our scholarly debate. The exact symbolism of certain ancient Egyptian bread shapes remains a subject of ongoing discussion among Egyptologists. Was a pyramid-shaped bread a mini-monument, or just a fun way to use up dough? It's a mystery that makes you smile, imagining ancient bakers debating the merits of a square loaf versus a triangular one. "Oh, Bertha, you simply must try my new dodecahedron loaf!" It's all the rage in Thebes. You see her preparing the oven, a simple mud brick structure heated by a wood fire. The warmth radiating from it is inviting, a beacon of comfort in the fading light. The crackle of the burning wood is soft, almost whispering. You imagine the satisfaction of pulling a perfectly baked loaf from that oven, the crust golden brown, the aroma filling the air. It's a feeling that transcends millennia. You can almost feel the warmth on your face. As the first loaves go into the oven, you consider the sheer amount of effort that went into producing a single meal. No supermarkets, no quick trips to the corner store. Every single ingredient was either grown, gathered, or hunted. It makes you appreciate the ease of your own kitchen, doesn't it? Though, honestly, their bread probably tasted better, less processed, more authentic. You chuckle softly to yourself, imagining an ancient Egyptian artisan bread baker rolling their eyes at our modern obsession with rustic loaves. Rustic. My dear, this is rustic. We invented rustic. The smoke from the oven drifts lazily upwards, a thin column against the darkening sky, carrying the tantalizing scent of baking bread. You feel a deep sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the rhythms of life that have endured for thousands of years. The simple act of creating sustenance, of transforming raw ingredients into something nourishing, is a timeless endeavor. You might find yourself drifting, the soft crackle of the fire and the gentle hum of the night becoming a comforting lullaby. You notice the woman's movements are slowing, her work almost done for the day. She covers the remaining dough, perhaps for the next morning's baking. There's an air of quiet contentment about her, the satisfaction of a job well done. You can almost feel the soft, warm glow of the finished bread radiating from the oven, a beacon of nourishment and security in this ancient world. The scent of baked goodness fills the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of the Nile. You realize that for the ancient Egyptians, bread wasn't just food. It was a symbol of life, prosperity, and stability. A bad harvest meant hardship, even famine. A good harvest meant abundance, feasts, and the ability to build grand monuments. Everything came back to the grain, and by extension, the bread. It was the foundation of their entire civilization. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the gentle sounds of the ancient village wash over you, feeling the deep connection to this place and time. You can almost hear the soft whisper of the papyrus, the gentle lapping of the Nile, and the distant cry of a night bird. The rhythm of the ancient world is incredibly soothing, isn't it? You might even start to feel a little drowsy. The warmth from the cooling oven is a gentle embrace, inviting you to relax deeper into your journey. You awaken, or rather, shift your awareness to the subtle shift in the air. The night has deepened, the moon now a brilliant silver disk hanging in the velvety black sky, casting long, dancing shadows. The village is quiet, save for the occasional bark of a dog or the chirp of a cricket. You are still in the ancient world, but now you find yourself wandering through a different scene, a less domestic one. You are in what appears to be a bustling marketplace. Though it's strangely silent in your current, dreamlike state, the air, even now, carries the ghost of 1,000-scent spices, dried fish, and yes, that omnipresent aroma of bread. You notice that even in the quiet of night, the presence of bread is undeniable. Stacks of loaves, now cool, sit covered on stalls, waiting for the morning's transactions. You observe the variety, even more so than in the home you just left. Some loaves are dark and coarse, probably made from emmer wheat, the most common grain. Others appear lighter, perhaps from barley or even a finer, sifted flour, indicating a more refined product, likely for the elite. This subtle difference in texture and color hints at the complex social structure of ancient Egypt, where even bread could signify status. The sheer volume of it is staggering. Imagine a world where your daily bread was your daily bread, not just a carb on the side. This leads us to our next mainstream historical fact. Bread was often used as a form of payment or as rations for laborers, particularly for the monumental construction projects like the pyramids. Forget your paychecks. These guys got paid in loaves. It makes you wonder how many loaves it took to build a pyramid. Enough to make a very tall sandwich, you can bet. As you drift through the silent market, you notice a stall with peculiar, almost decorative, bread remnants. Not whole loaves, but pieces. Some crumbled, some oddly shaped, almost like abstract art. You might think, well, that's just leftovers, right? But this is where our quirky tidbit comes in. Some ancient Egyptian bakeries produced specially shaped bread for religious festivals or as offerings, which would then be distributed or consumed in specific rituals. Think of them as ancient Egyptian holiday cookies, but made of bread. Imagine a baker painstakingly shaping dough into the form of an ankh, the symbol of life, only for it to be promptly eaten. Or, as one of my ancient Egyptian friends might have said, "It's not just bread, it's edible art!" Please don't tell the gods I ate their offering. I was really hungry. The moonlight illuminates the intricate carvings on a nearby temple wall, depicting scenes of harvest and offerings. You see figures presenting vast quantities of grain and bread to the gods, a testament to the importance of this staple. The stillness of the night amplifies the sense of timelessness, and you realize how deeply ingrained the production and consumption of bread were in every aspect of ancient Egyptian life, from the sacred to the mundane. It's almost as if the very air itself is infused with the scent of flour and yeast. You move closer to one of the stalls, examining the various bread forms. There are round flatbreads, similar to modern pita, and elongated loaves that might have been used for dipping into stews or sauces. You even spot some small, sweet-looking rolls, likely made with dates or honey, a rare treat. The ingenuity of these ancient bakers, working with limited tools and ingredients, is truly remarkable. They were not just bakers, they were alchemists, transforming simple grains into the very essence of life. You can almost feel the satisfaction they must have felt, pulling a perfect loaf from the oven. The question arises, what happened to the bread that wasn't eaten? The stale loaves, the crumbs, the accidental burnt bits. This leads us to our scholarly debate. Historians still debate the exact methods and prevalence of recycling or repurposing stale bread in ancient Egypt. While some evidence suggests it was ground down for animal feed, or even rehydrated and consumed, the extent of this practice across different social strata is unclear. Was it a common practice for everyone, or only for the less affluent? Perhaps they had an ancient Egyptian version of stale bread recipes, like bread pudding or croutons. You can almost hear an ancient Egyptian chef saying, "Don't throw that out! I've got a brilliant idea for a mummified bread dish!" You imagine the practicalities of it all. Without modern refrigeration, bread would spoil quickly in the hot Egyptian climate. So, minimizing waste would have been crucial. Perhaps they had large families that ate quickly, or maybe they just had a very efficient system for getting rid of leftovers. "Honey, did you finish your bread?" "No, Mom, it's already molding." "Well, too bad. It's still good for the geese." As you continue your silent exploration of the marketplace, you notice a peculiar detail. Some of the bread on display has small indentations or marks on it, almost like a baker's stamp. You wonder if this was a brand, indicating the bakery it came from, or perhaps a sign of quality. It makes you think of modern logos, a very early form of branding. Look for the scarab beetle stamp for the freshest bread in town. Or maybe it was just the baker's thumbprint. You can almost hear the baker, wiping sweat from their brow. "This one's extra special. It's got my lucky thumbprint!" The moonlight casts long, ghostly shadows that stretch across the marketplace, making the stacks of bread look like ancient monuments themselves. You feel a gentle coolness in the air, a whisper of the desert night. The silence is profound, broken only by the imagined echoes of ancient footsteps and the murmurs of long-forgotten conversations. You reflect on the timeless nature of food and its central role in human civilization. From the simplest loaf to the most elaborate feast, food connects us, sustains us, and shapes our cultures. It's a universal language, spoken across millennia. You begin to feel a deep sense of calm, a quiet appreciation for the ingenuity and resilience of the ancient Egyptians. Their lives, though vastly different from our own, were built on foundations that we can still recognize and appreciate. The humble loaf of bread stands as a testament to their resourcefulness and their ability to thrive in a challenging environment. You find yourself feeling pleasantly heavy, a gentle weight that pulls you deeper into a state of relaxed contemplation. The moon seems to hang lower, its light softer, almost like a comforting blanket. You let your thoughts drift, carried by the gentle current of time, feeling the peace of the ancient night settle around you like a soft, warm cloud. The moonlight softens further, morphing from a sharp silver into a hazy, golden glow. You are no longer in the quiet marketplace, but now you find yourself within the cool, dimly lit chambers of an ancient Egyptian tomb. The air here is still dry and carries a faint, earthy scent, mingled with something else, something sweet and surprisingly familiar. It's the distinct aroma of old bread, preserved through millennia, a testament to its enduring significance. You observe carefully, your eyes adjusting to the low light. Hieroglyphs adorn the walls, telling stories of the afterlife, of gods and pharaohs, and of the journey of the soul. And amidst these grand narratives, you spotted a small, intricately painted scene depicting offerings. And what is at the center of these offerings? Loaves of bread, of course. You realize the profound importance of bread in their beliefs about the afterlife. It wasn't just for the living, it was for the eternal journey. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Bread was a common funerary offering placed in tombs, intended to provide sustenance for the deceased in the afterlife. Imagine packing your loved one's lunchbox for an eternity.
"Don't forget your bread, dear!"
You'll get hungry on that long journey through the dart. It's a sweet, almost endearing thought, isn't it? A final act of care, ensuring their loved ones were never without. As you explore the tomb chamber, you notice some actual remnants of bread on small offering tables. These aren't fresh, obviously, but solidified, almost petrified, lumps of what were once nourishing loaves. Their shapes are still discernible, some round, some elongated, others twisted into forms you can't quite decipher. This leads us to a fascinating, quirky tidbit. Some preserved bread found in tombs has been analyzed, revealing not just the types of grains used, but also evidence of insects, or even small pieces of the grinding stones themselves, indicating the rudimentary nature of their milling processes. So, Imagine biting into your ancient bread and getting a bonus crunch. Tastes like history. And a little bit of rock. It's a good reminder that ancient food wasn't always as clean as our modern, sterilized versions. The air in the tomb is incredibly still, almost reverent. You can feel the weight of history pressing in. A palpable silence that has endured for thousands of years. The torchlight, or perhaps it's just the faint glow from your dream, dances across the walls, making the painted figures seem to come alive. You try to imagine the funerary rituals, the solemn processions, the prayers whispered for the deceased, and at the heart of it all, the simple, yet profound, act of placing bread in the tomb. You wonder about the specific types of bread offered. Were they the daily bread, or special loaves baked for the occasion? This brings us to our scholarly debate, the exact types of bread considered most suitable for funerary offerings, and whether they varied by social status or time period, is a subject of ongoing archaeological and historical research. Were the pharaohs getting artisanal, honey-glazed sourdough, while the common folk got the basic Emma flatbread, or was all afterlife bread created equal? It's a culinary mystery for the ages. You can almost hear an ancient Egyptian tomb decorator saying, "Make sure to depict the high-quality bread here, not that common stuff. This is for the pharaoh, after all." You drift further into the tomb. The silence a comforting blanket. You notice depictions of granaries overflowing with grain, and bakers at work, always ensuring a plentiful supply. It reinforces the idea that an abundance of food, particularly bread, was synonymous with a blessed existence, both in life and in the eternal realm. They truly believed that if you had bread, you had everything. Perhaps they were onto something. Fewer worries about stocks and shares, more about whether the wheat crop was good. You imagine the conversation among the living as they prepared these offerings. Did we remember the bread for Uncle Thutmose? He was always so fond of a good loaf. Yes, and I even put in an extra one, just in case he gets peckish on the journey. It's a touching thought, that even in death, the concern for nourishment remained. It shows a deep connection to the physical world, even as they prepared for the spiritual. The air in the tomb feels cool and dry against your skin, a comforting chill that is more refreshing than cold. You notice how the artistry on the walls seems to absorb the light rather than reflect it, creating a soft, contemplative atmosphere. You feel a sense of profound stillness, a place where time seems to stand still, much like the preserved bread itself. The sheer dedication and belief that drove them to meticulously prepare these tombs, down to the very last crumb of bread, is awe-inspiring. You consider the practicalities again. Would the bread truly last for eternity? Well, in the dry desert climate of Egypt, it certainly could last a very long time, as evidenced by the actual archaeological finds. But the belief was paramount, regardless of the physical reality. It was the intention that mattered, the provision of sustenance in the symbolic sense. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. It's a testament to hope, to a belief in continuity beyond death. You let your gaze linger on the bread offerings, silent witnesses to a bygone era. They represent not just food, but the very essence of ancient Egyptian life and death. The dedication to providing for the deceased, down to the minutest detail, speaks volumes about their values and their deeply held spiritual beliefs. You feel a gentle wave of drowsiness wash over you, the quiet reverence of the tomb enveloping you. The air is still, so incredibly still, almost as if time itself has fallen asleep in this ancient place. You feel a soft, lingering warmth from the remnants of the sun-baked world outside, even within this cool, dark chamber. It's a comforting thought, connecting the world of the living with the world of the dead, all through the simple magic of bread. You let your eyelids grow heavy, content in the quiet stillness, ready to drift further into the past. You stir, feeling a subtle shift in the air, a hint of moisture that wasn't present in the tomb. The cool, dry stillness gives way to a warmer, slightly humid atmosphere, carrying a faint, earthy scent mingled with something green and growing. You find yourself no longer in a tomb, but standing on the banks of the mighty Nile, the lifeblood of ancient Egypt. The sun, though not yet fully risen, paints the eastern sky in soft pastels, promising a new day. You watch as the first rays of light kiss the water, turning it into a shimmering ribbon. And what do you see floating gently down the river, among the papyrus reeds and the occasional wooden boat? Not actual loaves of bread, but bundles of reeds being carried, reminiscent of the flow of grain. This connection is more symbolic here, reminding you of the cycle of life that the Nile sustained, a cycle that directly impacted the very essence of Egyptian sustenance, grain for bread. You understand instinctively that the Nile was the giver of all good things, the silent partner in every harvest. Without its annual inundation, there would be no fertile soil, no grain, and no bread. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. The annual flooding of the Nile was absolutely essential for ancient Egyptian agriculture, depositing rich, fertile silt that allowed them to cultivate their crops, especially the grains used for bread. Without the Nile's yearly gift, their civilization simply wouldn't have existed. It's like the ultimate delivery service, bringing fresh soil right to your doorstep. Every single year. No need for expensive fertilizers when you have a river doing all the hard work. As you gaze at the tranquil waters, you notice farmers already at work in the fields near the riverbank, preparing the soil or tending to early crops. Their movements are deliberate, rhythmic, a dance with the land that has been performed for millennia. You see them using simple tools, their backs bent to the task, knowing that their efforts will ultimately yield the grains that feed their families and their entire society. You observe a small, wooden boat gliding silently along the river. In it you see baskets, some filled with fresh produce, others seemingly empty, perhaps ready to be loaded with grain from a distant field. This makes you ponder the logistics of ancient Egyptian life. How did they move so much grain from the fields to the cities, from the granaries to the bakeries? This leads us to a quirky tidbit. The Nile River wasn't just for irrigation. It was the primary highway of ancient Egypt, used extensively for transporting goods, including vast quantities of grain. Imagine rush hour on the Nile, with barges full of wheat instead of cars. Honk if you love bread! The air is fresh and clean, carrying the scent of damp earth and the subtle perfume of blooming lotus flowers. The sounds are peaceful. The gentle lapping of the water against the shore, the distant call of a bird, the soft murmur of voices carried on the breeze. You feel a profound sense of connection to this timeless landscape, a place where the rhythms of nature dictated the rhythms of human life. You consider the concept of leftover bread in this context. If grain was the foundation of their entire food system, and the Nile was the enabler of that grain, then every single crumb of bread was precious. Waste was likely minimized, not just out of thrift, but out of necessity. This brings us to our scholarly debate, the exact methods and efficiency of ancient Egyptian grain storage and distribution, and how they managed potential surpluses or shortages, are subjects of ongoing study. Did they have a sophisticated system for preventing spoilage, or was it a constant battle against pests and humidity? It's a testament to their organizational skills that such a large population could be fed consistently. You can almost hear an ancient Egyptian logistics manager saying, "We need to optimize the bread supply chain. Too many stale loaves are piling up near the pyramids." You imagine the massive granaries, cylindrical structures built to store the precious grain, keeping it safe from rodents and moisture. These weren't just simple sheds. They were vital infrastructure, ensuring the survival of the population during lean times or between harvests. The careful management of these granaries was a significant responsibility, often overseen by high-ranking officials. It's like their version of Fort Knox, but instead of gold, it held the ultimate treasure bread. The sun continues its ascent, painting the sky in ever brighter hues of gold and rose. You feel the warmth on your skin, a comforting embrace that signifies life and growth. The scene before you is one of peaceful industry, a reminder that sustenance is born from the earth, nurtured by water, and transformed by human hands. The ancient Egyptians understood this profound connection, living in harmony with the natural world that provided for them. You realize that even the concept of leftover bread might have been different for them. Perhaps what we consider stale or unusable, they found ways to transform, rehydrating it for gruel, using it to thicken stews, or as we've seen, feeding it to animals. Nothing truly went to waste in a world where resources were so carefully managed. You find a quiet sense of satisfaction in this efficiency, this deep respect for every kernel of grain. You drift further into this tranquil scene, letting the gentle sounds of the river and the quiet movements of the farmers lull you. The sunlight is warm and reassuring, a soft blanket of warmth. You feel a profound peace, a connection to the cycles of nature that sustained this magnificent civilization. The simplicity of their lives, centered around the land and the river, offers a quiet comfort. You feel your eyelids growing heavier, the gentle lapping of the Nile a soothing rhythm, pulling you deeper into a peaceful slumber, the scent of fresh earth and growing grain a comforting presence. The soft lapping of the Nile gives way to the distant, rhythmic clang of metal on stone, a sound that resonates with purpose and immense effort. You are no longer by the riverbanks, but transported to the very heart of ancient Egyptian industry, specifically to a place where the monumental structures that define their civilization are being erected. The air here is thick with dust. The sun is high and relentless, and the energy is palpable. You are at a quarry, or perhaps a construction site for a temple or pyramid, observing the thousands of laborers, their bodies glistening with sweat, toiling under the watchful eyes of their overseers. And what fuels these colossal undertakings? You guessed it, bread. You notice long lines of workers, moving in unison, carrying heavy stones, or pulling immense sledges. You also see designated areas where rations are being distributed. The sight of vast quantities of bread, laid out on mats or in baskets, ready for distribution, makes you truly understand its role as the ultimate energy source. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact: large-scale construction projects in ancient Egypt, such as the pyramids and temples, relied heavily on the regular provision of bread and beer rations to feed the thousands of laborers. Forget your energy bars. These guys built wonders on carbs and fermented grains. It really makes you appreciate the power of a good loaf. Just one more pyramid, lads. And then it's bread o'clock. As you observe the bustling activity, you notice that the distribution of bread is a well-oiled machine. There are specific officials whose sole job it is to manage the flow of food. You can almost hear the murmurs of the hungry workers, eager for their daily sustenance. The sheer scale of the operation is mind-boggling. Imagine coordinating meals for tens of thousands of people, day in and day out, without modern technology. You spot a group of laborers taking a brief respite, some gnawing on their coarse bread, others washing it down with what looks like thick, unfiltered beer. This reminds us of a quirky tidbit. The beer consumed by ancient Egyptian laborers was often a thick, nutritious, and low-alcohol beverage, more akin to a liquid bread than a modern alcoholic drink. It provided calories and hydration, making it an essential part of their diet. So, instead of a Gatorade, they had bread beer. Another long day, another refreshing loaf in a cup. You can almost hear them saying, "Don't just drink your beer, eat your beer!" The sounds of the construction site are a symphony of effort, the chipping of stone, the The groaning of ropes, the shouts of the overseers, and the rhythmic chant of the workers as they heave heavy loads. It's a testament to human endurance, fueled by the most basic of provisions. You feel the grit of dust on your skin, the warmth of the sun on your back, a visceral connection to the immense physical labor involved. You consider the logistics of what happened to any leftover bread in this context. With such a massive workforce, it's hard to imagine much going to waste. Every crumb would have been valuable. This leads us to our scholarly debate. While it's clear bread was a primary ration, historians still debate the exact mechanisms for managing surplus or leftover bread at large construction sites. Was it simply redistributed to other workers, or were there methods for repurposing it, perhaps into animal feed or other food products? It's unlikely they had a bread disposal crew, so efficient use was paramount. You can almost imagine an ancient foreman shouting, "No loaf left behind! Every crumb is pyramid fuel." You see some workers carefully collecting crumbs and smaller pieces of bread that have fallen, suggesting that even these scraps were not discarded lightly. It reinforces the idea that in this ancient world, nothing was truly wasted, especially something as vital as bread. Every calorie counted. The sun beats down relentlessly, but the workers continue, their dedication unwavering. You admire their resilience, their ability to perform such arduous tasks with seemingly endless energy. The sheer human effort required to build these enduring monuments is staggering, and it was the humble loaf of bread that literally provided the energy. You think of it as the ultimate power bar, ancient style. You notice the hierarchy in the distribution too. Some overseers might receive slightly finer bread, a subtle visual cue of their higher status. Even within the practicalities of feeding a workforce, social distinctions were maintained. It reminds you that even the most basic of necessities can reflect societal structures. The distant sounds of the quarry begin to soften, fading into a gentle hum. The harsh light of the sun mellows to a warm, golden glow. You feel a deep sense of respect for the people who built these ancient wonders, and for the simple, yet profound, role that bread played in their lives. The air, still carrying the faint scent of dust and effort, is now infused with a quiet sense of accomplishment. You find yourself feeling pleasantly tired, a sympathetic exhaustion that comes from witnessing such immense labor. The rhythmic sounds of the construction site, once sharp and insistent, now blend into a soothing, repetitive beat, like a distant heartbeat. You let your thoughts drift, feeling the warm embrace of the ancient sun as it begins its slow descent, pulling you deeper into a peaceful, bread-fueled slumber. The rhythmic clang of stone fades, replaced by the soft, rustling sounds of reeds and the gentle splash of water. You find yourself drifting on a papyrus boat, navigating the tranquil backwaters of the Nile Delta. The air is warm and humid, carrying the scent of rich, damp earth and the sweet perfume of water lilies. The landscape is lush and green, a stark contrast to the dusty construction sites. You glide past fields of towering papyrus and dense thickets of reeds, feeling a profound sense of peace. And here, in this watery world, bread, or rather the ingredients for bread, are still central to life. You notice fishermen casting nets, and farmers tending small plots of land along the calmer canals, their livelihoods dependent on the sustenance drawn from this fertile delta. You observe the rich biodiversity of the delta, birds nesting in the reeds, fish darting beneath the surface. It's a vibrant ecosystem teeming with life. And much of that life, both human and animal, indirectly or directly relies on the same agricultural bounty that produces bread. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact, beyond direct human consumption. Leftover bread and grains were often used as animal fodder in ancient Egypt, particularly for domestic animals like cattle, pigs, and fowl. Nothing went to waste, especially not calories. It's the ultimate upcycling program, ancient style. This bread's a bit past its prime for us. But the pigs will love it? It's organic, gluten-free, and probably artisanal at this point. As you gently glide through the water, you spot a small farmstead nestled amongst the reeds. You see chickens pecking in the dust, a few goats tethered nearby, and perhaps a family preparing a meal. The sounds are domestic and comforting: the clucking of hens, the distant bleating of a goat, the quiet chatter of a family. You realize that the cycle of food, from grain to bread, and then back into the ecosystem as animal feed, was a complete and efficient loop. You notice a child tossing small pieces of what looks like old bread to a flock of ducks near the water's edge. The ducks eagerly gobble them up. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. Even wildfowl like ducks and geese, which were hunted or kept, might have been inadvertently or intentionally fed with discarded bread or grain, effectively integrating leftovers back into the food chain. So, if you ever wondered what ancient Egyptian ducks ate, now you know your ancestors' stale bread. It's like an ancient, all-natural breadcrumb trail for hungry birds.
Come on, little feathered friends, dinner is served!
It's last week's sourdough, but it's still good. The air is thick with the sweet scent of blooming lotus flowers and the fresh, earthy smell of the delta. The sun is warm but gentle, filtered slightly by the surrounding reeds. You feel a profound sense of natural harmony, where every element has its place and purpose. The quiet hum of the natural world is incredibly soothing. You consider the delicate balance of this ecosystem. If bread was a primary food source and leftovers fed animals, then the health of the grain's supply directly impacted the health of the livestock, and thus the overall well-being of the population. This brings us to our scholarly debate: the extent to which specific types of leftover bread were routinely given to different animals, and whether this was a planned part of their agricultural economy or merely opportunistic waste reduction, is still debated among historians. Was there a specific bread for pigs recipe, or just a general "here you go, animals, eat this" approach? It adds another layer of complexity to their surprisingly sophisticated agricultural practices. You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian farmer saying, "This bread is too hard for me, but it'll make excellent pig feed. Or maybe I'll soak it in beer first for extra flavor." You observe a farmer carefully tending to a small herd of cattle. Their hides sleek and healthy. Their well-being directly contributes to the farmer's family, providing milk, meat, and even labor. And at the root of their nourishment, often, were the byproducts of human food production, including the humble leftover bread. It's a beautiful, interconnected system. The gentle rocking of the papyrus boat, combined with the soft sounds of the delta, creates a truly peaceful atmosphere. You feel completely at ease, allowing your thoughts to drift like the clouds above. The vastness of the delta, stretching out in all directions, filled with life, is a testament to the generosity of the Nile. You realize that even in this seemingly simple rural setting, the principles of efficiency and resourcefulness were paramount. Nothing was truly discarded. Every part of the harvest, every byproduct, found its purpose. It's a lesson in sustainability that echoes through the millennia. You chuckle softly to yourself, imagining an ancient Egyptian farmer bragging about their zero-waste lifestyle. "We don't do waste, my friend. Our bread turns into pigs. Our pigs turn into, well, more food!" The sunlight shimmers on the water, creating a dazzling display of light. The air is sweet and fresh, a gentle breeze rustling the reeds. You feel a deep sense of serenity, a quiet contentment that comes from witnessing life unfold in its most fundamental forms. The simple elegance of their sustainable practices is quite profound. You feel your eyelids growing heavy, the gentle sway of the boat, and the soft sounds of the delta lulling you into a profound state of rest. The scent of damp earth and fresh water is a comforting presence, pulling you deeper into a gentle, dream-filled sleep. The gentle rocking of the papyrus boat fades, replaced by the hushed whispers of reverence and the faint, sweet scent of incense. You find yourself not in the fertile delta, but within the sacred precincts of a grand temple complex. The massive stone columns rise majestically, reaching towards the sky, their surfaces covered in intricate hieroglyphs and vibrant paintings. The air is cool within the shaded halls, a welcome respite from the outside sun. Here, the role of bread transcends mere sustenance. It becomes an integral part of ritual, an offering to the gods, a symbol of divine favor. You see priests moving silently, performing their sacred duties, and in their hands, or on altar tables, you again spot the unmistakable shape of bread. You understand immediately that in this hallowed space, bread takes on a different meaning, a spiritual one. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Bread was a central component of daily offerings made to the gods in ancient Egyptian temples. These offerings were not just symbolic. They were believed to provide sustenance for the deities, ensuring their favor and the continued prosperity of Egypt. Imagine the gods having a bakery delivery service, as that Ra's gluten-free multigrain, and Osiris's sourdough with extra honey. It's a serious business, appeasing the divine appetites. As you move through the temple, you observe various altars laden with offerings, fruits, vegetables, jugs of wine or beer, and prominent among them, beautifully crafted loaves of bread. Some are plain, others appear more elaborate, perhaps decorated with specific symbols. The sheer quantity suggests a continuous cycle of devotion. You notice a priest carefully arranging a basket of small, conical loaves on an altar. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. Some of the bread offered to the gods was deliberately shaped into specific forms, like cones or pyramids, which likely held symbolic significance related to creation, fertility, or the sun god Ra. So these weren't just any old loaves. They were spiritually charged architectural masterpieces. Is this a bread or a miniature pyramid? Why not both? You can almost hear a priest saying, "The gods prefer their offerings geometrically precise. No lumpy loaves for the divine." The silence in the temple is profound, broken only by the soft rustle of priestly garments and the occasional distant chanting. The sunlight, filtering through high clerestory windows, creates shafts of light that illuminate dust motes dancing in the air, adding to the ethereal atmosphere. You feel a sense of awe and reverence, surrounded by the tangible expressions of ancient Egyptian spirituality. You consider what happened to these sacred offerings after the rituals were complete. They couldn't simply be thrown away. This brings us to our scholarly debate. The ultimate fate of temple offerings, particularly bread, after they were presented to the gods, is a complex topic debated by historians. While some believe they were consumed by the priests and temple staff as a form of sacred sustenance, others suggest specific portions might have been distributed to the public or even to the poor as an act of charity. Was it a divine buffet or a spiritual soup kitchen? It's a fascinating question about the intersection of religion and practical resource management. You can almost imagine a priest sighing, "All right, Ra's had his fill. Time for us to finish off these sacred sandwiches." You see a group of priests gathering some of the offered bread, carefully placing it into baskets. It seems they are indeed repurposing these sacred leftovers, perhaps for their own consumption or for distribution outside the temple walls. It's a pragmatic approach to divine sustenance, ensuring that nothing goes to waste, even when it has been dedicated to the gods. The air is cool and peaceful, carrying the subtle, lingering scent of incense, a calming aroma that evokes a sense of ancient mystery. You feel a deep sense of connection to the spiritual heart of ancient Egypt, where every action, even the baking of a loaf of bread, could be imbued with profound meaning. You realize that the concept of leftover bread in this context is transformed. It's not just about waste management, it's about the continuation of a sacred cycle. The offerings nourish the gods, and then in turn, nourish their human servants, completing a loop of divine and earthly sustenance. It's a beautiful thought, a testament to their interconnected worldview. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. Even the gods appreciate a good meal, and they're apparently not above sharing their leftovers. The sunlight softens as it filters through the temple's grand entrance, casting long, peaceful shadows. The sounds of the temple are hushed, almost imperceptible. You feel a profound sense of tranquility, a gentle calm that washes over you. The sheer scale and intricate detail of the temple, combined with the quiet reverence of the priests, create an atmosphere of immense peace. You feel your eyelids growing heavy, the sweet scent of incense, and the hushed whispers of ancient rituals lulling you deeper into a peaceful, dream-filled state. The coolness of the stone, the soft, diffused light, all contribute to a feeling of deep serenity, pulling you gently into a restful slumber. The sweet scent of incense in the temple fades, replaced by the tangy, earthy aroma of fermenting grains and a distinct, yeasty tang. You are no longer in a sacred space, but transported to the heart of ancient Egyptian industry, specifically to a large-scale brewery. The air is warm and humid, thick with the intoxicating smell of brewing. You see vats bubbling, workers stirring huge concoctions, and the rhythmic sound of grain being mashed and filtered. And at the core of this ancient alchemy, bread, or at least a very close relative. You realize that the concept of leftover bread here takes on an entirely new, incredibly productive meaning. You observe the sheer volume of grain being processed. It's an impressive operation, designed to produce vast quantities of what was a staple drink for all Egyptians, from pharaohs to common laborers. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptian beer was often made using partially baked or crumbled bread as a primary ingredient, mixed with water and left to ferment. It wasn't just a drink. It was a significant source of nutrition and calories, blurring the lines between beverage and food. So, when they said, "Let's grab a beer," they really meant,
Let's grab a liquid sandwich.
as you watch the brewing process, you see workers crumbling large, coarse loaves of bread into the vats, mixing them with water and sometimes dates for sweetness. The mixture is then left to ferment, transforming into the thick, nutritious beverage. It's a fascinating process, transforming something solid into something liquid, yet retaining its nourishing properties. You notice the consistency of the bread used. It's not finely milled flour, but rather coarse, indicating that perhaps even less than perfect loaves, or specialized bread made for this purpose, were used. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. The bread used for brewing was often very lightly baked, almost raw, ensuring that the starches were still available for the fermentation process. It was essentially a bread designed to be dissolved and transformed, not for eating in its usual form. Imagine a baker being told,
Don't bake it too much. We need it for beer. But sir, it's barely cooked. Perfect.
The sounds of the brewery are a symphony of industry. The bubbling of the vats, the splashing of liquids, the clatter of pottery, and the occasional grunt of a worker. You feel the warmth and humidity in the air, a direct result of the fermentation process. It's a bustling, productive environment, vital to the ancient Egyptian diet. You consider the idea of leftover bread in this context. While not exactly leftovers in the sense of uneaten food, the bread used for beer was a deliberate transformation of a primary food source into another essential commodity. This brings us to our scholarly debate. The exact types of bread or grain-based products specifically prepared for brewing, and whether stale or leftover bread was intentionally diverted to breweries on a large scale, is a subject of ongoing historical and archaeological research. Was there a dedicated beer bread production line, or was it a clever way to utilize surplus or less palatable loaves? It adds another layer to their incredible resourcefulness. You can almost hear an ancient brewmaster saying, This batch of bread came out a bit dense.
Perfect for beer!
You see large quantities of the fermented beverage being poured into distinctive, narrow-necked pottery jars for storage and distribution. The sheer scale of production indicates that beer was not just for special occasions, but a daily staple consumed by all. It's fascinating to think that a significant part of their daily caloric intake came from this liquid bread. The air is thick with the sweet, yeasty scent, almost like a giant, warm bakery but with a boozy twist. You feel a sense of awe at their ingenuity, their ability to transform basic agricultural products into such varied and essential foodstuffs. They were masters of food science long before the term existed. You realize that the circular economy of ancient Egypt was incredibly sophisticated. From grain to bread, from bread to beer, and then the byproducts of brewing potentially used as animal feed. Nothing was truly wasted. It's a model of sustainability that feels remarkably modern. You find a quiet sense of admiration for their practicality and resourcefulness. Why waste a perfectly good stale loaf when you can turn it into a refreshing beverage?
It's just good business sense!
The sounds of the brewery begin to soften, fading into a gentle, consistent hum. The warm, humid air begins to feel less intense, more like a comforting blanket. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that transformed simple ingredients into the very lifeblood of a civilization. The rhythmic bubbling of the vats and the distant sounds of the workers blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The warm, yeasty scent is a comforting presence, inviting you to relax even further. The yeasty tang of the brewery slowly dissipates, replaced by the faint, earthy smell of damp soil and something subtly chemical. You are no longer in the bustling industrial setting, but find yourself in a quieter, more intimate space. An ancient Egyptian home, or perhaps a small workshop where medicines and remedies are prepared. The light is diffused, perhaps from a small window high up, casting soft shadows. You see various herbs, pestles and mortars, and small jars filled with liquids and powders. And surprisingly, among these medicinal tools, you spot small, hardened pieces of bread. You realize that even something as mundane as leftover bread had a place in ancient Egyptian medicine. You observe the careful movements of a person, perhaps a healer or a household member, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. Their focus is intense, their knowledge seemingly passed down through generations. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptians incorporated bread, particularly moldy bread, into some of their remedies and poultices due to its perceived medicinal properties, unknowingly leveraging early forms of penicillin. They were essentially using antibiotics thousands of years before Fleming. Imagine going to the doctor and being prescribed a moldy sandwich. Take 2 slices of this and call me in the morning. As you watch, you see the healer taking a small piece of what appears to be old, slightly moldy bread. They crumble it and mix it with other ingredients, perhaps herbs or honey, to form a paste. The application is careful, suggesting a belief in its efficacy. It's a fascinating blend of ancient knowledge and accidental foresight. You notice the specific kind of mold. It's not just any mold. It's a particular greenish-blue variety. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. While they didn't understand why it worked, the Egyptians likely observed that certain types of mold that grew on bread had a beneficial effect on infections or wounds. This practical observation led to its inclusion in their pharmacopoeia. It's a prime example of ancient empirical medicine. This moldy bread tastes awful,
but it makes my cough go away!
Strange. Or perhaps my arm is infected, but after wrapping it in this bread, it feels much better. The power of fermentation, perhaps. The air in the room is quiet, punctuated only by the gentle scraping of the pestle and the soft rustle of dried herbs. You feel a sense of calm and focused intent, a testament to the ancient Egyptians' pursuit of health and well-being, even with rudimentary tools. You consider the implications of using leftover or moldy bread for medicinal purposes. It highlights a culture of extreme resourcefulness, where nothing was truly without value. This brings us to our scholarly debate. While the use of moldy bread is well documented in ancient Egyptian medical papyri, historians still debate the specific types of ailments it was most commonly used for, and the consistency of its application across different social classes. Was it a last resort, or a common household remedy? It's a tantalizing glimpse into their medical practices. You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian doctor saying, "My dear, for that nasty boil, I prescribe a generous application of last week's bread."
The bluer, the better.
You see the healer carefully applying the bread-based poultice to a simulated wound on a practice dummy, or perhaps a model. Their movements are precise and confident, suggesting a long tradition of such practices. It's a remarkable example of how everyday items could be repurposed for entirely different and vital functions. The faint, earthy smell of the herbs mingles with the subtle, distinct scent of old bread, creating an unusual but not unpleasant aroma. You feel a deep sense of respect for their practical wisdom, their ability to observe and apply what they learned from nature. Even without a modern scientific understanding, you realize that the leftover bread, far from being useless, held the potential for healing. It was a humble ingredient with profound implications for well-being. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the simplest observations. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. Who knew bread could be a pharmacy?
Maybe I should check my fridge more often for miracle cures.
The light in the room softens further, casting long, peaceful shadows. The sounds are hushed, almost imperceptible. You feel a profound sense of tranquility, a gentle calm that washes over you. The focused intensity of the healer, combined with the quiet reverence for the healing process, creates an atmosphere of immense peace. You feel your eyelids growing heavy, the subtle sense of herbs and old bread lulling you deeper into a peaceful, dream-filled state. The stillness and the soft, diffused light contribute to a feeling of deep serenity, pulling you gently into a restful slumber. The subtle, earthy scents of the ancient pharmacy fade, replaced by a delightful mix of sweet, spicy, and fruity aromas. You are no longer in a quiet workshop, but in what appears to be a bustling, vibrant kitchen within a wealthy ancient Egyptian estate. The air is warm and filled with the tantalizing smells of diverse ingredients. You see servants meticulously preparing various dishes, some familiar, others utterly alien. And amidst the exotic ingredients and elaborate preparations, you still catch glimpses of bread, sometimes as a base, sometimes as a garnish, but always present. You realize that even in the realm of ancient Egyptian cuisine, bread, including its leftovers, found ingenious and often delicious new purposes. You observe the sheer artistry involved in some of the food preparation. Dishes are not just cooked. They are crafted, arranged with an aesthetic sensibility. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptians, particularly the wealthier classes, had a diverse and sophisticated cuisine, and they often incorporated bread into various dishes beyond simply eating it plain, sometimes even using it to thicken stews or as a base for sweet confections. Think of it as the ultimate culinary chameleon, able to adapt to any dish. Darling, this stew needs a bit more body.
Throw in some of that day-old artisan sourdough. As you watch,
you see a cook carefully crumbling stale bread into a rich stew, stirring it until it thickens into a hearty consistency. In another area, you see someone mashing dates and honey with fine bread crumbs, shaping them into small, sweet cakes. The ingenuity is remarkable. You notice the distinct types of bread used. Some are fine, white loaves, indicating higher quality flour, while others are coarser. This leads us to a quirky tidbit: ancient Egyptian recipes sometimes called for specific types of bread or even bread crumbs to achieve certain textures or flavors in dishes. This wasn't just about using leftovers. It was a deliberate culinary technique. So, they were essentially pioneers of the breading technique. For a truly divine dessert, use only the finest, thrice-baked bread crumbs. Or, my secret ingredient, a whisper of stale bread. It adds depth. The sounds of the kitchen are a harmonious blend of activity. The gentle chopping of vegetables, the sizzling of meat in a pan, the soft murmur of instructions given and received. You feel the warmth of the hearth, the energy of a busy kitchen, and the undeniable pull of delicious aromas. You consider the concept of leftover bread in this gourmet context. It wasn't a sign of poverty, but often a deliberate choice for culinary enhancement. This brings us to our scholarly debate. While some users of stale bread were clearly about resourcefulness, historians still debate the extent to which specific leftover bread dishes were considered delicacies or simply pragmatic ways to utilize ingredients. Was a bread-thickened stew a gourmet item, or a clever way to stretch a meal? It highlights the fluid boundaries between necessity and culinary innovation. You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian food critic saying, "The mouthfeel of this bread pudding is exquisite, truly a testament to the chef's ability to transform the humble stale loaf." You see a cook carefully grating dried fruits into a mixture that includes crumbled bread, preparing a sweet, dessert-like concoction. The meticulousness of their work speaks volumes about the value placed on even the most basic ingredients when transformed with skill. The air is rich with a symphony of smells, the savory aroma of cooking meat, the sweet perfume of dates and honey, and the comforting, earthy scent of fresh and repurposed bread. You feel a deep sense of appreciation for the culinary artistry of the ancient Egyptians, their ability to create delicious and varied meals from limited resources. You realize that leftover bread was not a problem, but an opportunity. An opportunity to add texture, thicken, sweeten, or expand a dish. It's a valuable lesson in creative cooking and minimizing food waste, a concept that is remarkably relevant even today. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. They truly understood the magic of bread. From staple to soup thickener to dessert, it did it all. The sounds of the kitchen begin to soften, fading into a gentle, rhythmic hum. The warm, inviting air begins to feel less active, more like a comforting embrace. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that transformed simple ingredients into a rich and varied culinary landscape. The gentle clatter of pottery and the soft murmurs of the cooks blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The sweet and savory scents are a comforting presence, inviting you to relax even further. The sweet and savory scents of the ancient kitchen gracefully recede, replaced by the dry, sandy air of the desert and the rhythmic thump of a camel's gait. You are no longer within the confines of a bustling estate, but traveling across the vast, undulating dunes. Part of a small caravan heading towards a distant oasis. The sun beats down with fierce intensity, and the silence of the desert is profound, broken only by the creak of saddle leather and the soft crunch of sand underfoot. Here, in this harsh, unforgiving environment, every provision is precious, and leftover bread takes on an even more critical role, a lifeline. You observe the stoic expressions of the merchants and guides, their faces weathered by sun and wind. Their supplies are carefully packed, every item chosen for its utility and durability. And you notice that among their provisions, often wrapped in cloth to protect it from the elements, is dried bread. You understand that in the desert, food preservation is paramount, and bread, even stale bread, is a vital energy source. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Dried or hardtack bread was an essential provision for ancient Egyptian travelers, merchants, and soldiers. as it could be stored for long periods and provided vital sustenance during journeys across the desert or on military campaigns. Think of it as their ultimate non-perishable MRE, meal ready to eat ancient style.
Just add water. And maybe a lot of effort to chew.
As you journey, you see a merchant unwrapping a piece of dried bread, its texture like a hard biscuit. They break off a piece carefully, as if it were gold, and slowly chew it. This bread isn't soft and fluffy. It's dense and designed for survival. You notice the particular dryness of the bread, almost devoid of moisture. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. To make bread suitable for long-term storage in the desert, it was often baked multiple times or left to dry out completely in the sun, creating a hard, cracker-like consistency that resisted mold and spoilage. So, it wasn't just stale, it was intentionally mummified bread. Imagine a baker proudly declaring, "My loaves are so dry,
They'll outlast the pharaohs."
the silence of the desert is immense, broken only by the sounds of the caravan and the vastness of the wind. You feel the fine sand beneath your feet, the warmth of the sun on your skin, and the sheer scale of the landscape. It's an environment that demands respect and careful preparation. You consider the practicalities of consuming such hard bread. It would likely have been softened with water, or perhaps chewed slowly, allowing saliva to break it down. This brings us to our scholarly debate. While the existence of hardtack bread is clear, historians still debate the exact methods of its consumption on long journeys. Was it primarily soaked, or was chewing it a common practice? And how palatable was it, really? It's a fascinating question about the intersection of necessity and human endurance. You can almost imagine an ancient traveler complaining, "This bread is so hard, I'm pretty sure I just chipped a tooth."
But at least I'm not hungry.
You see a traveler carefully breaking a piece of dried bread into a small cup, then pouring a bit of water over it, allowing it to soften into a gruel. This transformation from rock hard to edible demonstrates the ingenuity born of necessity. The air is dry and warm, carrying the faint scent of sand and the distant promise of an oasis. You feel a profound sense of the vastness of the desert and the incredible resilience of those who traversed it. Every calorie, every drop of water, was critical for survival. You realize that leftover bread, when properly preserved, was not a burden but an invaluable asset. It transformed from a daily staple into an emergency ration, a symbol of preparedness and survival. It's a remarkable example of how food technology, even rudimentary, played a crucial role in exploration and trade. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. Who needs modern backpacking food when you have ancient Egyptian hardtack?
Just don't forget your extra strength jaw muscles.
The rhythmic sway of the camel and the soft whisper of the desert wind begin to lull you. The intense sunlight softens, painting the dunes in hues of gold and amber as the day begins its slow decline. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that allowed survival in such harsh conditions. The endless expanse of the desert and the rhythmic sounds of the caravan combine to pull you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The dry, warm air is a comforting presence, inviting you to relax even further into the depths of sleep. To the dry, sandy air of the desert slowly recedes, replaced by the cool, damp atmosphere of subterranean chambers. You are no longer traversing sun-baked dunes, but standing within the dark, echoing depths of an ancient Egyptian mine. The air is heavy, carrying the scent of rock, dust, and human effort. You hear the distant ring of chisels on stone, the scrape of tools, and the low murmurs of voices. Here, far from the sun and the fertile Nile, the sustenance of the miners is paramount, and bread, often brought from afar, is their lifeline. You observe the stoic faces of the miners, their bodies caked with dust, their strength fueled by the very same staple that built cities. You understand the immense hardship of their lives, working deep underground in oppressive conditions. Every calorie was hard-earned and vital. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Miners in ancient Egypt, working in harsh conditions often far from agricultural centers, relied heavily on transported rations of bread and water for their sustenance, which were essential for maintaining their energy and productivity. Imagine your lunch break consisting of a stale loaf in a dark, dusty tunnel. It makes modern office work seem quite luxurious, doesn't it? Another 12-hour shift, another perfectly unexciting loaf. As you watch the miners, you see them taking breaks, sitting in small clusters, carefully unwrapping portions of their daily bread ration. It's often dense, dark, and probably not fresh, but it provides the necessary energy for their grueling work. You notice how carefully they consume every crumb, wasting nothing. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. Due to the difficult conditions and isolation of many mining sites, efficiency in food distribution and consumption was critical. Any leftover or even fallen crumbs of bread were likely collected and consumed, as every calorie was vital for survival and productivity. It's the ultimate no crumb left behind policy.
Oops, dropped a piece.
5-second rule doesn't apply down here. It's the survival rule. The sounds of the mine are rhythmic and repetitive, the steady clink of tools, the soft scrape of rock, the shuffle of feet. The air is cool but stifling, a constant reminder of the enclosed space. You feel the weight of the earth above you, the sheer scale of the underground labyrinth. You consider the logistical challenge of supplying these remote and often isolated mining operations. This brings us to our scholarly debate. While it's clear food was transported to mining sites, historians still debate the specifics of how leftover or surplus bread from these rations was managed. Was it returned, repurposed at the source, or simply consumed entirely by the miners, leaving no waste? The harshness of the environment suggests very little would have been discarded. You can almost imagine an ancient mining supervisor saying, "Anyone seen a stale loaf?
We need it for energy."
No, seriously, we need it. You see a small group of workers sharing a single, large loaf, carefully dividing it among themselves. The camaraderie born of shared hardship is palpable. It's a reminder that even in the most challenging environments, human connection and shared sustenance are crucial. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint metallic tang of rock. You feel a profound sense of the human spirit's resilience, its ability to endure and create even under extreme duress, fueled by something as fundamental as bread. You realize that leftover bread in this context would have been almost non-existent. Every piece was accounted for, every calorie consumed. It speaks to a level of resource management driven by pure necessity. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. They say diamonds are forever, but bread built the mines to get them. The distant sounds of mining begin to soften, fading into a gentle, consistent hum. The cool, damp air begins to feel less oppressive, more like a comforting coolness. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that allowed humans to extract resources from the very heart of the earth. The rhythmic sounds of the tools and the soft murmurs of the miners blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The earthy scent of the mine is a comforting presence, inviting you to relax even further into the depths of sleep. The damp coolness of the mine slowly recedes, replaced by the warmth and gentle breeze of an open-air market. But this time, it's a more specialized one. You are in a bustling area where various crafts and trades are on display, the air filled with the scent of wood, leather and, surprisingly, a subtle sweetness. You see artisans at work, potters shaping clay, weavers at their looms, and carpenters carving intricate designs. And here, even in these craft-focused settings, you notice the unexpected presence of bread or its derivatives, not as food, but as a tool or an ingredient in their craft. you realize that leftover bread sometimes found remarkably ingenious non-food uses. You observe a potter carefully smoothing the surface of a clay vessel. To your surprise, they are not using a specialized tool, but a small, slightly damp piece of bread. It seems to be working wonders, absorbing excess moisture and creating a remarkably smooth finish. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact: stale bread, often moistened, was sometimes used by ancient Egyptian artisans, particularly potters, as a flexible and absorbent tool for smoothing clay surfaces or cleaning. It was a readily available, cheap, and effective material. Imagine telling your art teacher, "I need more bread for my pottery project, but what about the clay?" "No, I mean for smoothing." As you watch the potter, you see them periodically dipping the bread piece in water, then gently running it over the clay. The bread conforms to the curves of the pot, creating a perfectly even surface. It's a testament to their resourcefulness. You notice the particular consistency of the bread being used. It's not too soft, not too hard, just right for the task. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. The ideal bread for this purpose would have been slightly stale, but still pliable, allowing it to be molded to the desired shape for smoothing or wiping, without leaving crumbs or residue. So, not just any leftover bread, but the perfectly stale bread. "Excuse me, do you have any artisanal, 3-day-old, slightly damp bread?" For my pottery, of course. The sounds of the market are a cheerful cacophony, the gentle thwack of a potter's wheel, the rhythmic clack of a loom, the soft murmur of conversations, and the occasional call of a vendor. You feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the energy of human creativity all around you. You consider other potential non-food uses for leftover bread. This brings us to our scholarly debate. While the use of bread in pottery is fairly established, historians still debate the extent of its use in other crafts or industries. Could it have been used as a gentle abrasive for polishing, or perhaps as a temporary adhesive? The possibilities, given its malleable and absorbent nature, are intriguing. Was it the ancient Egyptian equivalent of duct tape? You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian artisan saying, "My chisel broke, but at least I have this old loaf to clean up the mess." You see a carpenter carefully cleaning dust from a newly carved wooden artifact, using a soft piece of bread. It seems to pick up fine particles without scratching the surface. Another ingenious application. The air carries the scent of wood shavings, wet clay, and that subtle, sweet, bready aroma. You feel a deep sense of admiration for the ingenuity of these ancient craftspeople, their ability to transform everyday items into functional tools. You realize that leftover bread was not just relegated to being food or animal feed. It was a versatile material that found its way into the very fabric of their industries. It speaks to a holistic approach to resources, where every item had multiple potential lives. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. Who knew bread was the ultimate multi-tool? From sandwich to sandpaper, it does it all. The sounds of the market begin to soften, fading into a gentle, consistent hum. The warm, inviting air begins to feel less active, more like a comforting presence. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that transformed humble ingredients into essential tools. The rhythmic sounds of the artisans at work and the soft murmurs of the crowd blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The sweet and earthy scents of the crafts are a comforting presence, inviting you to relax even further. For the scents of the artisan market gently fade, replaced by a cool, clean aroma, reminiscent of fresh linen and dried herbs. You are no longer in a bustling outdoor space, but within the quiet, meticulously organized chambers of an ancient Egyptian funerary workshop, or perhaps a temple where embalming took place. The atmosphere is solemn, almost sterile, and the light is subdued, filtered through narrow apertures. You see various implements, unguents, and linen bandages. And surprisingly, amidst these preparations for the eternal journey, you detect a faint, familiar scent, the subtle, earthy aroma of bread. You realize that even in the sacred and precise process of mummification, leftover bread might have played an unexpected, yet functional role. You observe the careful, ritualistic movements of the embalmers, their faces serious and focused. They handle sacred objects and the deceased with utmost reverence. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. While not a primary component, some scholars suggest that desiccated or very dry bread, or even bread crumbs mixed with natron, might have been used in mummification processes, perhaps as a filler or absorbent material within the body cavity, due to its availability and absorbent properties. It was an ingenious, if somewhat surprising, way to utilize a common resource in a very specialized and sacred procedure. Imagine the ultimate dry cleaning job,
Ancient Egyptian style!
Don't forget the breadcrumbs. They're essential for a perfect mummification. As you watch, you see an embalmer working with various absorbent materials. You notice small, hardened pieces, which upon closer inspection seem to be incredibly dry, almost petrified bread. They are being carefully packed into a linen bundle, ready for use. You notice the extreme dryness of these bread pieces. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. Any bread used for mummification would have been highly desiccated, effectively turning it into a very dry, absorbent sponge, perfect for drawing out moisture during the embalming process. It was less about nourishment and more about effective desiccation. So, not just stale, but super stale, super absorbent bread. For best results, use bread that's been sitting in the desert sun for a year! The silence in the workshop is profound, broken only by the soft rustle of linen and the occasional hushed instruction. You feel a deep sense of reverence for the deceased and the meticulous care taken to prepare them for the afterlife. You consider the delicate balance between sacred ritual and practical necessity. This brings us to our scholarly debate. The exact extent and specific purpose of bread or bread-based materials in mummification is still a topic of discussion among Egyptologists. Was it a consistent practice, or only used when other materials were scarce? And what symbolic significance, if any, did it hold in this context? It's a fascinating and somewhat macabre application for a common foodstuff. You can almost imagine an ancient embalmer saying, "We've used all the natron. Quick, get me some of that leftover papyrus and a few loaves of last month's bread." You see the embalmers carefully measuring and mixing various substances. The presence of the dried bread, integrated into these complex procedures, speaks to a culture that truly wasted nothing, finding utility in the most unexpected places. The air is cool and clean, carrying the faint, almost imperceptible scent of natron and linen, with that subtle undertone of ancient bread. You feel a profound sense of the Egyptians' deep belief in the afterlife and their unwavering dedication to ensuring a successful transition for the deceased. You realize that leftover bread, even in its most dried and unappetizing form, could contribute to one of the most sacred and defining practices of ancient Egypt. It's a testament to the versatility and pervasive nature of this humble staple. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. From daily meal to eternal resting place,
Bread truly had a full life cycle!
the sounds in the workshop begin to soften, fading into a gentle, consistent hum. The cool, quiet air begins to feel less formal, more like a comforting stillness. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that found purpose in every material, even in death. The hushed movements of the embalmers and the soft rustle of linen blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The clean, earthy scents are a comforting presence, inviting you to relax even further into the depths of sleep. 5. The quiet, almost sterile atmosphere of the embalming workshop gently fades, replaced by the warm, vibrant sounds of children's laughter and the gentle scuffle of bare feet on packed earth. You are no longer in a somber, sacred space, but in a bustling ancient Egyptian village, observing the playful antics of children. The air is warm, filled with the everyday sounds of village life, chickens clucking, distant murmurs of adults, and the joyful shouts of young ones. And here, in the hands of these children, you see leftover bread take on a surprisingly joyful and educational role. You observe a group of children gathered, intently focused on their game. One child holds a small, oddly shaped piece of hardened bread. They're not eating it, they're manipulating it, using it as a toy or a prop in their imaginative play. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. While not its primary purpose, leftover or stale bread, particularly hardened pieces, could be repurposed by ancient Egyptian children as simple toys, game pieces, or even a form of early building block. Necessity, as always, was the mother of invention, and also of playtime. Imagine telling your kids, "Go play with your stale bread, dear." As you watch, a child uses a hard piece of bread to represent a small boat sailing across a puddle, or perhaps as a miniature animal in a pretend hunt. Their imaginations are boundless, transforming a mundane object into something magical. You notice the durability of the bread they are using. It's hard and resistant to crumbling, making it ideal for repeated play. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. The dry, dense nature of some ancient Egyptian bread, especially once stale, made it surprisingly durable for non-food applications. It wouldn't easily disintegrate like modern soft bread, allowing it to serve as a makeshift toy or tool.
So, it was the original action figure made of carbs! This is my mighty bread warrior!
He might be a bit crumbly,
but he's fierce!
The sounds of the children's play are infectious, giggles, shouts. The excited babble of young voices. You feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the simple joy of childhood resonating across millennia. You consider the educational aspects of such play. Children might have learned about shapes, textures, and even the value of resources through manipulating these bread toys. This brings us to our scholarly debate. While anecdotal evidence suggests children might have played with hard bread, historians still debate the prevalence and intentionality of this practice. Was it a common, widespread form of play, or an occasional, opportunistic use of discarded items? It provides a charming glimpse into the everyday lives of ancient Egyptian children. You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian parent saying,
"Don't you dare eat your toy! It's for building! We're trying to teach you resourcefulness!"
You see a child using several small, hard pieces of bread to create a miniature wall or a rudimentary house. Their creativity is evident, turning something discarded into an opportunity for learning and fun. The air carries the familiar, comforting scent of dust, warmth, and the distant aroma of cooking. You feel a profound sense of the universal nature of childhood, the enduring human need for play and imagination, regardless of time or place. You realize that leftover bread, even for the youngest members of society, was not truly leftover. It found its purpose, transformed by imagination into something new and engaging. It's a beautiful testament to human ingenuity and the power of play. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. Who needs fancy plastic toys when you have a perfectly good, dried-out loaf of bread? Hours of entertainment guaranteed. The sounds of the children's laughter begin to soften, fading into a gentle, rhythmic hum. The warm, sun-drenched air begins to feel less active, more like a comforting presence. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the timeless joy of childhood, and the simple ways in which resources were repurposed. The playful sounds and the gentle warmth of the sun blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The comforting sounds of the village and the warmth of the sun are a soothing presence, inviting you to relax even further. 6. The cheerful sounds of children's play softly recede, replaced by the hushed tones of scholars and the soft rustle of papyrus scrolls. You are no longer in a bustling village, but within the quiet, illuminated halls of an ancient Egyptian library or a scribe's workshop. The air is cool and dry, carrying the faint scent of old papyrus, ink, and a subtle, almost imperceptible earthy aroma. You see scribes diligently at work, their reed pens scratching across scrolls, their expressions focused and scholarly. And here, in this intellectual setting, you observe leftover bread playing a surprisingly sophisticated and practical role. You watch a scribe making a meticulous copy of a text. Occasionally they pause, take a small piece of what appears to be slightly damp, dense bread, and gently blot an excess ink spill or lift a stray mark from the papyrus. You realize that leftover bread, specifically its absorbent and malleable qualities, found a unique application in the precise world of ancient Egyptian writing. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptian scribes sometimes used stale or slightly damp bread as a form of eraser or blotter to correct mistakes or absorb excess ink on papyrus scrolls. It was a practical, readily available, and effective tool for their craft. Imagine a modern student using a bagel to erase their homework. Oops.
Wrong answer! Let me just get my trusty bread rubber!
As you observe the scribe, you see the bread performing its task with remarkable efficiency, lifting the ink without damaging the delicate papyrus. Its soft, absorbent nature makes it ideal for this delicate work. You notice the specific consistency of the bread used for this purpose. It's not too wet, not too dry, and has a certain density. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. The optimal bread for use as an eraser would have been dense and slightly stale, allowing it to absorb ink effectively without crumbling excessively or leaving behind a greasy residue. It was a specialized tool, albeit one made from a common food item, so
not just any old bread, but a precision bread eraser!
My dear, for this delicate hieroglyph, only a 2-day-old rye will do. The sounds in the scriptorium are hushed and studious, the gentle scratch of reed pens, the soft rustle of papyrus, the occasional cough or sigh from a focused scribe. You feel the cool, dry air against your skin, the stillness of a place dedicated to knowledge and meticulous record-keeping. You consider the implications of using such a humble item in such a refined context. This brings us to our scholarly debate. While the use of bread as an eraser is mentioned in some texts, historians still debate how widespread this practice was and whether it was used for major corrections or just minor smudges. Did master scribes always have a piece of designated eraser bread on hand, or was it a more occasional, improvised solution? It offers a fascinating insight into their pragmatic approach to tools. You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian scribe, exasperated, muttering, "Blast! Another ink blot! Where's my emergency bread supply?" You see a younger scribe being instructed by an older, more experienced one, demonstrating the proper technique for using the bread to correct a small error. It seems to be a part of their standard training. The air carries the subtle, academic scent of ancient papyrus and ink, mingled with that faint, comforting aroma of old bread. You feel a profound sense of the value placed on written knowledge and the meticulous care taken to preserve it. Even if it involved a piece of bread, you realize that leftover bread was not merely a foodstuff, but a functional material, adaptable to the needs of intellectual pursuit. It speaks to a culture that valued resourcefulness in all aspects of life, from sustenance to scholarship. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. Who needs fancy rubber erasers when you've got the ultimate, biodegradable edible correction tool? The sounds of the scriptorium begin to soften, fading into a gentle, consistent hum. The cool, quiet air begins to feel less academic, more like a comforting stillness. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that found purpose in every material, even in the pursuit of knowledge. The rhythmic scratching of pens and the soft rustle of papyrus blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The intellectual and calming atmosphere is a soothing presence, inviting you to relax even further into the depths of sleep. 7. The quiet, scholarly atmosphere of the scriptorium gracefully dissolves, replaced by the bustling energy and vibrant colors of a street fair or public celebration. You are no longer in a hushed intellectual space, but amidst a joyous crowd, the air alive with music, laughter, and the enticing smells of various foods and sweet treats. You see performers, vendors, and families enjoying themselves, a kaleidoscope of ancient Egyptian life in celebration. And here, in this festive environment, you discover that leftover bread found its way into delightful, often overlooked, forms of entertainment and confectionery. You observe children eagerly clutching small, brightly colored objects, some of which appear to be edible. You notice stalls selling sweet cakes and pastries, and subtly, woven into these festive treats, you recognize the familiar essence of bread. You realize that even discarded or coarse bread could be transformed into something celebratory and delicious. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Leftover or coarse bread was sometimes repurposed in ancient Egypt into sweet treats or confections by mixing it with honey, dates, and fruits, particularly for festivals or special occasions, turning a staple into a luxury. It was the ultimate ancient Egyptian dessert hack.
Don't throw out that old bread!
It's about to become a party in your mouth. As you watch, you see a vendor carefully shaping a mixture of crumbled bread, sticky dates, and honey into small, bite-sized balls. Some are even coated with finely chopped nuts or sesame seeds. These are not everyday items. They are festive indulgences. You notice the texture of these treats dense and chewy, clearly derived from bread. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. These ancient confections, often using a bread base, were a clever way to add sweetness and richness to the diet, especially during celebrations, while also utilizing surplus or less palatable bread. It was a delicious act of culinary resourcefulness. Imagine a baker saying, "My bread didn't rise quite right, so I made it into a delicious, honey-soaked problem solver." The sounds of the celebration are vibrant and joyful. The lively strains of a lyre, the rhythmic beat of drums, the excited chatter of the crowd, and the happy cries of children. You feel the warmth of the sun, the infectious energy of a community in joyous assembly. You consider the economic and social implications of such treats. This brings us to our scholarly debate. Historians still debate the accessibility of these bread-based confections across different social strata. Were they primarily for the elite, or did even common folk get to enjoy them during festivals? It offers a delightful glimpse into the ancient Egyptian sweet tooth and their capacity for turning basic ingredients into something special. You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian child begging, "Please, mother, just one more honey bread ball."
My friend Thutmose says they're made from sacred leftovers.
You see families sharing these treats, their faces lit up with smiles. It's a reminder that food, especially sweet food, brings people together and marks moments of happiness. The air is thick with the sweet, inviting scent of honey, dates, and that subtle, comforting aroma of baked bread. You feel a profound sense of the ancient Egyptians' appreciation for celebration and their ingenuity in creating pleasures from simple resources. You realize that leftover bread, far from being a problem, could be the foundation for joyful indulgence. It's a testament to the transformative power of culinary creativity and a culture that found ways to celebrate even the humblest of ingredients. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. Who knew ancient Egypt was so good at turning trash into delicious treasure? Forget the pyramids. I want more honey bread balls. The sounds of the celebration begin to soften, fading into a gentle, rhythmic hum. the warm, inviting air begins to feel less active, more like a comforting presence. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that transformed humble ingredients into moments of joy. The lively music and the happy murmurs of the crowd blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. A sweet, comforting sense or a soothing presence, inviting you to relax even further into the depths of sleep. The joyful sounds of the street fair softly dissipate, replaced by the hushed quiet of a physician's chambers or perhaps a temple infirmary. You are no longer amidst celebration, but in a space dedicated to healing and care. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint, clean scent of medicinal herbs and bombs. You see various surgical instruments, bandages, and small pots of remedies. And here, in this sober setting, you again encounter the unexpected presence of bread, not as food or a treat, but as a crucial component in ancient Egyptian medical practices, sometimes even for more complex treatments beyond simple poultices. You observe a physician meticulously preparing a remedy. They are not just mixing herbs, they are incorporating finely ground, dried bread into a mixture designed for ingestion or external application. You realize that leftover or specific types of bread were valued for their properties beyond simple nutrition, even in advanced medical contexts. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptian medical texts describe various remedies that included bread, often ground into powders or mixed with other ingredients, used for internal ailments like stomach issues or as a binder for medicinal pasts. It highlights their practical and empirical approach to medicine. Imagine your doctor prescribing bread powder for your tummy troubles. As you watch, you see the physician carefully grinding dried bread into a fine powder, then mixing it with honey and a selection of herbs. The precision suggests a well-established practice, not a random improvisation. You notice the specific preparation of the bread, completely dried and pulverized. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. For internal remedies, the bread would likely have been thoroughly dried, and perhaps even toasted to prevent further fermentation or mold, then finely ground to ensure easy absorption or mixing with other compounds. It was a refined ingredient, a pharmaceutical bread. This isn't just any bread, it's medicinal bread. Handle with care and consume responsibly. The sounds in the infirmary are hushed and professional. The soft scrape of a mortar and pestle, the gentle rustle of linen, the quiet breathing of patients. You feel the cool, clean air against your skin. The solemnity of a place dedicated to alleviating suffering. You consider the scientific basis, or lack thereof, for such remedies. This brings us to our scholarly debate. While the presence of bread in medical recipes is clear, historians still debate the exact rationale behind its inclusion in many cases. Was it purely as a binder or filler, or did they attribute specific therapeutic properties to the bread itself, beyond the accidental discovery of mold's effects? It's a fascinating look into the early stages of medical understanding. You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian medical student quizzing their professor. But why bread, professor? Is it for the taste or the texture? You see a patient being given a small, bread-based pellet to swallow, or perhaps a paste applied to their skin. The trust in the physician's knowledge is palpable, underscoring the importance of their medical practices in society. The air carries the distinct, sharp scent of various herbs and the subtle, earthy aroma of dried bread. You feel a profound sense of the ancient Egyptians' dedication to health and their willingness to experiment and observe to find effective treatments. You realize that leftover bread, through drying and grinding, was transformed into a pharmaceutical aid. It's a testament to their resourcefulness and their empirical approach to health, finding utility in unexpected forms. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. From food to medicine, bread truly covered all bases. Just imagine the ancient pharmaceutical bread lobby. The sounds in the infirmary begin to soften, fading into a gentle, consistent hum. The cool, quiet air begins to feel less clinical, more like a comforting stillness. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that found purpose in every material, even in the delicate art of healing. The hushed movements of the physicians and the soft sounds of preparation blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The clean, calming scents are a soothing presence, inviting you to relax even further into the depths of sleep. 9. The quiet, medicinal scents of the infirmary gently fade, replaced by the warm, smoky aroma of wood fires and the distant chatter of a large, communal gathering. You are no longer in a specialized setting, but transported to the heart of an ancient Egyptian feast or banquet, perhaps celebrating a successful harvest or a religious festival. The air is vibrant with laughter, music, and the tantalizing smells of roasted meats, fresh produce, and copious amounts of bread. You see people reclining on cushions, enjoying elaborate dishes, and servants circulating with platters overflowing with food. And here, even in this scene of abundance, you realize that the concept of leftover bread had a role, not just in practical reuse, but in the sheer volume and variety of bread consumed. You observe the sheer quantity of bread on display. Piles of flatbreads, conical loaves, braided breads and small, rich rolls are everywhere. It's a visual feast in itself, underscoring bread's central role even in times of plenty. This brings us to our next mainstream historical fact. Feasts and banquets in ancient Egypt featured vast quantities and varieties of bread, often far more than could be consumed in one sitting, leading to significant leftovers that were then managed through various methods, including distribution to the poor or use as animal fodder. It was the original all-you-can-eat buffet, with a very practical clean-up plan. Is that all the bread? I thought this was a feast! As you watch, you see revelers enjoying different types of bread, some dipping it in sauces, others using it to scoop up stew. The abundance is almost overwhelming, suggesting that having more bread than you could eat was a sign of prosperity and good fortune. You notice that even amidst the feasting, there's a subtle efficiency. Servants are clearing away platters, but you don't see food being carelessly discarded. This leads us to a quirky tidbit. Even at lavish feasts, ancient Egyptians were generally very resourceful. Any substantial leftover bread would have been collected and often redistributed, whether to lower-ranking attendees, servants, or even to the needy. Wasting food, even in abundance, was likely frowned upon.
So, while it was a feast, it wasn't a free-for-all for the trash bin.
No, darling. That perfectly good half-loaf isn't for the dog.
It's for the starving poet!
The sounds of the feast are joyous and boisterous. The clinking of pottery, the lively strains of musicians, the roar of laughter, and the happy murmurs of conversation. You feel the warmth of the communal fires, the infectious energy of celebration. You consider the social implications of such leftovers. This brings us to our scholarly debate. The systematic nature of food redistribution from elite banquets to the general populace, or the poor, is still debated among historians. Was it an organized system of charity, or more of an informal practice? It offers a fascinating glimpse into the social safety nets and communal practices of ancient Egypt. You can almost imagine a feast organizer announcing, and for our grand finale,
all leftover bread will be given to the villagers! Enjoy your second-hand feast, everyone!
You see servants carefully collecting the untouched or partially eaten loaves onto separate trays, indicating a deliberate system for managing surplus. It's a testament to their ingrained resourcefulness, even when surrounded by luxury. The air is thick with the rich, inviting scents of roasted meats, sweet fruits, and the omnipresent, comforting aroma of bread. You feel a profound sense of the ancient Egyptians' generosity and their communal spirit, even in times of celebration. You realize that leftover bread, even from a lavish feast, found its purpose. It extended the reach of the banquet, nourishing others and reinforcing social bonds. It's a beautiful testament to a culture that understood the value of every resource. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. They say sharing is caring, and ancient Egyptians clearly took that to heart.
Especially with their bread.
The sounds of the feast begin to soften, fading into a gentle, rhythmic hum. The warm, inviting air begins to feel less active, more like a comforting presence. You feel a profound sense of peace settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the ancient ingenuity that ensured nothing truly went to waste, even during the most extravagant celebrations. The festive music and the happy murmurs of the crowd blend into a soothing, consistent drone, pulling you deeper into a tranquil, dream-filled slumber. The comforting scents of the feast are a soothing presence, inviting you to relax even further into the depths of sleep. The warm, festive atmosphere of the ancient feast gently dissipates, replaced by the profound stillness and quiet coolness of the vast desert night, far from any human settlement. Above you, the sky is a canvas of shimmering stars, more numerous and brilliant than you've ever seen. The air is dry and pure, carrying only the faintest whisper of wind across the dunes. You are alone, suspended in the timeless vastness, and yet, even here, the omnipresent legacy of bread, and its various forms, feels palpable, a silent testament to its enduring influence on ancient Egyptian life. You gaze up at the countless stars, tracing imaginary constellations, feeling incredibly small yet deeply connected to the ancient ones who looked upon this very same sky. You understand that every aspect of their lives, from the grandest monuments to the simplest meal, was underpinned by their relationship with the land, the Nile, and the basic sustenance it provided. And central to it all was bread, in all its forms and uses, including its leftovers. This brings us to our final mainstream historical fact: the ancient Egyptians' sophisticated management of grain and bread, including the repurposing of leftovers for various uses: food, payment, animal feed, medicine crafts, and ritual, was fundamental to their long-term survival, prosperity, and the very structure of their civilization. It wasn't just a food item. It was a cornerstone of their entire society, a symbol of their ingenuity and resilience. So, next time you see a loaf of bread, remember, it built a civilization. As you lie there, bathed in starlight, you reflect on the journey you've taken. From the domestic hearth to the grand temples, from dusty construction sites to quiet workshops, bread has been a constant, adaptable companion. It fed the living, sustained the dead, healed the sick, and even served as a plaything for children. You notice the profound silence, broken only by the almost imperceptible whisper of the desert wind. This leads us to a quirky tidbit: the sheer efficiency and resourcefulness of ancient Egyptians in utilizing every part of their agricultural produce, including what might be considered waste by modern standards, contributed significantly to their ability to sustain a large and complex society for millennia in a challenging environment. They were the ultimate ancient ecologists, long before the term existed. Waste not, want not was practically their national motto, especially concerning bread. The air is incredibly clean and crisp, carrying the ethereal scent of pure desert and the distant, almost imagined echo of ancient life. You feel a deep sense of peace, a quiet awe at the enduring legacy of a civilization built, quite literally, on bread. You consider the knowledge that still eludes us, the mysteries yet unsolved about their daily lives. This brings us to our final scholarly debate. Despite extensive archaeological and textual evidence, historians continue to uncover new details about the precise methods and cultural nuances surrounding the production, consumption, and repurposing of bread in ancient Egypt, revealing an ever more complex and fascinating picture.
There's always more to learn about the humble loaf.
It's a testament to the richness of history that even something as seemingly simple as bread still holds secrets. You can almost imagine an ancient Egyptian baker winking. You think you know bread. You have no idea. You feel the cool sand beneath you, the gentle vastness of the night sky above. The journey through the history of ancient Egyptian bread has revealed not just a food item, but a profound story of ingenuity, resilience, and a deep connection to the earth's bounty. You realize that the concept of leftover bread was almost foreign to them, transformed always into another valuable resource. It speaks to a wisdom that we, in our modern world of abundance, could still learn from. You find a quiet smile spreading across your face. They say bread is the staff of life, and for the ancient Egyptians, it was the staff of civilization itself. The stars shimmer brighter, pulling your gaze higher into the infinite. The gentle whisper of the desert wind is a soft lullaby, a comforting sound that wraps around you. You feel a profound sense of tranquility settling over you, a quiet appreciation for the incredible journey you've shared. The vastness of the desert and the endless expanse of the starlit sky combine to pull you deeper into a profound, peaceful slumber. The pure, clean air of the desert night is a soothing presence, inviting you to relax even further into the deepest, most restful sleep. You drift, carried on the soft currents of ancient time, completely at peace.